Welcome to Dolphins In Depth, a podcast produced by the Miami Herald. I'm your host, Omar Kelly, uh, Miami Herald columnist, and this week we will be talking about either the resurrection of the Miami Dolphins season or we'll be beginning the autopsy of the season. Joining me is Isaiah Smalls, Miami Dolphins beat reporter. Isaiah, obviously, we know what's at stake. We know exactly what point the season has reached. The Miami Dolphins are 2-5 after struggling without Tua Tagovailoa and then not taking care of business with Tua Tagovailoa from the Arizona Cardinals loss. And here we are headed up to Buffalo with a maybe opportunity to save the season. Do you buy that a victory against the Buffalo Bills can save this 2024 season?
Oh, 100%. If they beat Buffalo, obviously with the history there, like that's something that the team can rally upon, right? Like they haven't won in Buffalo since 2016, right? Like let's put that into perspective again. Josh Allen hasn't lost at home to this Miami Dolphins team, right? And so look, it can happen. You know, stranger things have happened. If they pull out the victory, I think this definitely can be a rallying point to take on for next week and the week after that.
Yeah, the New York Jets, they just beat a Houston Texans team.
Yep.
Obviously, that was at home. But, the one thing I've always learned about the NFL is that anything can happen on any given Sunday, especially if a team doesn't take care of the ball. It doesn't matter how good you are, you can take that L. Also, I will make the argument, and it's a very weak argument, but I will make the argument that this is a better Dolphins team than they've shown all season.
I agree.
Even if you look at the first Buffalo Bills game, where everybody will acknowledge that they got their face kicked in, that game was assisted by the fact that Tua Tagovailoa threw 3 interceptions, one of which was a pick six.
Two in the
Now,
first half as well.
yeah,
Two in the
so
first half.
so that's not Tua's game. That wasn't anything that the Bills particularly did. One was a tip pass, one was a receiver running the wrong route, and then the other was a jailbreak blitz where he had two backups on the left side of his offensive line. They had a jailbreak, and Tua was trying to throw the ball away. Now, Tua can play better. Tua has played better, and I think what we saw from the offense against the Arizona Cardinals, that wasn't even Tua at his best.
No.
That was just Tua status quo Tua. They had 8 possessions in that game, and the majority of those possessions ended in points for the Miami Dolphins. What they couldn't do is they couldn't punch it in once they got into the red zone and turn those opportunities into touchdowns. But that's offensively. I think my opinion is I'm a little bit more worried about the defense right now than I am the offense from this standpoint. No Zach Sealer, who's ruled out of this game because they haven't figured out a way to have him play with a face mask. I don't know what's that. There's healing that needs to go on. So let me not.
That
Let
wouldn't.
me.
Yeah. Don't do that. Don't do that. I thought it was a vision issue as of today. With
Yeah. No, I agree with that.
if he can't see, he can't see. Like you know what I'm saying. I don't know what you want him out there doing.
Listen, Zach Sealer's an Iron Man.
Of course.
I would have loved for him to have the opportunity to give it a chance. There is no black eye, so maybe it's a cornea issue. I don't know, but healing has to happen. So we know if you know Zach, if he could play, he would play.
Of course, yeah.
This is a guy who doesn't even miss practice. Then you've got the Javon Holland. Well, he's ruled as doubtful. We watched him rehab this week, but it's not likely expected to play. And then defensively, you got Kader Kohu, your nickel cornerback, who's going to be ruled out. And Kader, even though he's been carved up by the Buffalo Bills over the years and carved up by Josh Allen, he's an important player because now that forces Jalen Ramsey into the nickel spot, which I don't have a problem with him playing the nickel spot, but what happens when you have a cornerback who's going off on you? Where do you feel like this Dolphins defense is after last week's collapse to the Arizona Cardinals?
I mean, they have a lot to prove. I think obviously we saw how big each of those players. Obviously, Javon went down in the second half, right? Well, second quarter, but ruled out in the second half, right? But I think we knew this team was going to miss Zach Sealer's presence. Obviously, what he does is.
I don't think they did miss Zach Sealer's
presence. You don't think so?
They did, but they didn't do poorly against the Arizona Cardinals.
No, you're right. They did a great job stopping the run, and I think that was great. But I think from also a pressure standpoint, what he brings, and what I'm saying, and putting that pressure on the quarterback to kind of move around, right? I think they were missing that a little bit. Like they couldn't necessarily corral Kyler Murray. Like a
lot of teams can't corral Kyler Murray.
I agree, but now you have Josh Allen.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So like I think that's his absence is huge. Deshaun Hand played straight, but like his absence is huge. I think Cater Code we saw last week, his absence was bigger than I thought. Considering that last drive, once the Cardinals kind of figured out that like, okay, cool, we can just chase that matchup, right, and just have Marvin Harrison guarding Cam Smith, I believe, and it was kind of was eating, on that specifically on that last drive, right?
So Harrison's a bad boy though.
He is. No, he is. But
he earned some. Listen, and a lot of those passes were some perfectly placed passes.
They were, especially that one in the end zone that he caught. That was a phenomenal ball,
and that was over Jalen Ramsey.
Look, I tweeted it out. I said like I think the wide receiver position is in a great place because if you look at the receivers that have gotten the better of Jalen Ramsey, it's only been rookies. It's Brian Thomas Jr. and Marvin Harrison Jr. So that's good for that. But I think, obviously, like I think each of these, three people, obviously, assuming Javon Holland doesn't suit up, like they're huge misses, right? I think.
Come on, Javon Holland is not playing.
Yeah.
Let's be real about it. Let's be real about this.
Look, I've gotten in trouble assuming before. I'm just going to.
Here's, and I don't want to overstep here, but Javon is in a critical point of his career where he's trying to get the money.
Yeah.
Going out there, putting bad tape on film is not going to help you get the money. Yeah. Now, yes, he's got to fight this injury issue, and he's got to fight the perception that I won't play through pain, and he's got to fight the perception that I'm not having the type of season that I want to have. But Javon is ultimately going to get the money, and putting yourself on the field not 100% is not going to help you get the money.
No, that's real. That's real.
Yeah.
But overall, I'm very pessimistic, to use the Mike McDaniel word, very pessimistic about the chances of that defense, just because of the injuries, and then just what Josh Allen has done. Because remember, like I think this is a better Bills team than they faced with the addition of Amari Cooper. I think honestly because it's not.
Oh, you mean because then the one they faced earlier?
Yes. Specifically because of Amari Cooper and what he has done with that offense.
Okay, he's not even gelling, and he's not guaranteed to play.
I did see that. However,
I believe his status is
questionable.
He's questionable.
Okay.
Not to say that I'm worried, because I'm not worried, because he's not all the way. He's not all the way greased up in their offense.
I agree, but I think just the presence of having a true number one receiver out there has opened up the offense. And I wrote about this in my story, because if you look at his numbers the past couple of 2 games, and then you look at Keon Coleman's numbers the past couple games, that's where it gets a little bit scary, because Keon Coleman has really, whatever Amari Cooper has done, he has opened up Keon Coleman.
I heard he's drawing the cloud coverage, and Keon Coleman is eating off the one-on-ones, which is the situation that you would hope would be benefiting the Miami Dolphins. Unfortunately, is not benefiting Miami Dolphins.
Yeah.
Wanted to check in on the status of Tyreek Hill. Tyreek practiced today. Show up today?
Yeah, he showed up. He showed up to practice. It was a little bit later than usual.
He's always late.
Yeah, but
let me clean this up.
Yes,
for fans who do not understand, Tyreek, and this has been something for 3 years. Tyreek gets stretched, and then he shows up to practice, whereas everybody else is stretching on the field and warming up. Tyreek does his own thing, just like Jalen Ramsey does his own thing, and we acknowledge it. We know it. It's the status quo. Let me clean that up.
Yeah, I was about to say, great players, you got a little bit of a longer leash,
Yeah, let me clean that up. And Tyreek sometimes in training camp, Tyreek will show up in practice like 30 minutes into practice. But Tyreek is doing Tyreek things.
He'll show up 30 minutes and then catch a ball, a deep ball, and it's,
Exactly. How much are you worried about this foot issue with Tyreek?
I mean, obviously the foot is super challenging, especially for a receiver, right? Like that's, and who knows? I don't think we've got any clarity on which foot it is, right? So, but obviously the foot is huge if you're a receiver. All the weight that you're putting on it, that's huge. But if he can go, I know he will go. I'd have to say, with this season on the line, with the pieces already missing on the defensive side, I'd be very surprised if Tyreek doesn't suit up. I think he'll try to push through, and then
he's listed. He's not even listed as a questionable status.
Exactly. So he's going to push through, and God forbid he aggravates it and they lose. Then if I could project something, then we might see something happen a little bit different because you got to nurse it. The 2-5 they'd be 2-6. There's not really much of a it's difficult.
Are you talking about taking the season? What are you talking about?
I'm not talking about taking the season. I'm just saying that first of all, I don't believe in tanking in football. I am a 76ers fan. I remember watching that 10-72 team. You can tank in basketball. You can't tank in football because it's too violent of a game, right? And
Cincinnati Bengals and Miami Dolphins would disagree with you.
Well, we know how it worked out with the Dolphins, and there's a court case that's still pending because of that. So I don't want to. Let's not comment any further.
I mean, listen, they won't even deny it. Don't deny it to me because I know the truth. Don't deny it to me. I was here. I covered the team. People would show up on Tuesday and start the game on Sunday. Okay, let's not pretend like you wasn't trying to intentionally lose games. But let's carry on.
Yeah. I was just gonna say. I'm just leave it at this. I think they have a very interesting chance on Sunday, but I think it's gonna have to. They have an interesting chance to do something. They do.
I think they have it. Oh, absolutely.
I think if you listen to everybody who's talked this week, right? They understand that the odds are against them. It's pretty obvious. It's not all sunshine and roses in that building, right? But because of McDaniel, because of just some of the players and the characters that they have on this team, right? It is still very upbeat, right? Because I don't think anyone thinks that it's over yet, right? Obviously it would take an improbable into the season for them to do this, but I mean it's still possible. And if you look at the schedule, down the line, the teams aren't as strong as it would be, right? You mentioned the Texans.
The Rams.
Yeah, the Rams I think are getting stronger, right? But I think it's a team like the Texans isn't. They lost Stephon Diggs, the other day. Nico Collins is still hurt. I think he'll be available by that game. But you think of the team that they rolled out last night, that wasn't the same team that they thought they would have at that point in the season, right? And then you think about a team like the Niners, right? The Niners were obviously, they pulled out a win on Sunday against the Cowboys, but they that team wasn't looking good for a very long time.
They're battling a ton of injuries, just
exactly
like the Miami Dolphins are. But
exactly, yeah. And that's just the name of the game when it comes to
Cleveland. Football. Cleveland won with Jameis Winston.
Exactly. So it's really a toss up. That's what we're just trying to say here. It obviously you can study the tape, you watch the tape, and it's all about the execution that happens on the field. But we are not in those meeting rooms. We don't see what they, are seeing and are trying to exploit, right? And I think, it's impossible to count this team out when they do have the offensive talent that they have, right? I think the only thing that matters is, will that talent show up? How will the play calling be? And can they limit the turnovers, right? Obviously, and then can they force them with the quarterback that is as turnover prone as Josh Allen?
So, not this year.
Not this year, but in the past, he has been. I think he's taking a lot better.
Can you force Josh Allen into making mistakes? And I think most teams can. I don't think that this team can, primarily because I'm not sure that they're going to get the pass rush to force Allen into making errant throws. Now, you also have to get the lead to make Allen throw more desperate passes. I don't know how many teams have had the lead against Josh Allen this season, except for in his losses. I've watched every single one of Josh Allen's just dominant. I think he's been the player of the week in the AFC just about every single time he's faced the Dolphins, except for the earlier matchup this week. It is a team where he clearly has Miami's number, but I don't think it's just him. I think the offensive line, which right now the Buffalo Bills offensive line is probably playing at the best offensive line in the NFL. I think they've also had this team's number, and that's a front line issue. Now, for Miami to win this game, they're going to have very exotic blitzes. You're going to have Chop Robinson and whoever's on the opposite side of him, whether it would be Tyus Bowser or whether it be Muhammad Kamara or Quentin Bell. I doubt it's going to be Quentin Bell. They're going to have strong games. And also, I think, to me, a lot of this season's play is on the Leeds linebackers. David Long has not had a very good stretch of games, primarily because he's battling through some injuries. He's not on the injury report right now, but I'm not naive enough to not know that he's not battling a knee and a hamstring and all kinds of stuff, and it's impacting his performance. Miami is talking a great game about, hey, we're not, he's been great. He's playing well. He's fighting through some things, and that's all well and good, but teams are looking at the film and creating game plans to attack the linebackers and primarily to attack David Long. And how do you counter that if you're the Miami Dolphins? Or do you have to play Anthony Walker in passing situations? And I don't know what the answer is, because this is what you have as a team right now.
No, that's real. But Anthony Walker is competent. Like he has several starts under his belt, right? During his time in Cleveland. So it's not like, he's like, a scrub or anything. Like, I think he's definitely
liver.
Yeah. I think he's definitely competent, right? So if you feel like you are really losing that much by having David Long in the field, and look, David Long was great to start the year, right? And then when the injury bug bites, it bites, man. And so, unfortunately, there has been a lag off in his play. But I think, if you really see that you have like a overall negative by having him out there, right, and obviously see that there's a weak spot there, then I think you have to. It's only right to be able to give your team a chance, right, to throw out Walker in there, because as they've told us, all year, right, it's all about specifically doing your job, right. One person messes up, like, it could. The whole thing can fall apart. So you don't want to have obvious holes like that on your defense, for sure, especially going up against an elite player like Josh Allen, for sure.
Now, next week is the trade deadline. I would make the argument to you that Chris Greer would be an idiot if he decided to be a seller, primarily because you're probably selling for somebody else who's not even going to be – you're selling for another GM, because I think if this season goes south, somebody's going to be offered to the football gods, and it's probably going to be Chris, or to the fans, and it's probably going to be Chris Greer. So if you're trading players for picks, which is, you could if you want to. I'm sure Jeff Wilson would love a new home. He hasn't played in months. But you're basically getting picks for another GM to make selections. Do you see this team potentially being a buyer, let's say, if they beat the Buffalo Bills?
I mean, they could be. I'm thinking about the holes on the defense, right? Like, obviously, I think holes. Yeah, I could potentially see them doing it. I think it all depends on cap space, right? Like, I think they could stand to upgrade at the edge rusher position, right? Obviously, there's a lot of injured people, right? But, if you think that you can make a push right now, right, towards the end of the season and maybe get yourself one of those, edge rushers whose name keeps coming up. I can't help but think of Zadarius Smith. I think, like, that's a name that is consistently brought up. Um,
Not sure
what?
that's a great fit, but go ahead.
Look, I'm just saying, like, look, like those are, I'm just saying names, right? Like, I think, and so obviously, I think they could, I think that's one of the bigger positions you need. Like, I'm sure they could, you know, upgrade at the D tackle position as well. But, I think you'd be looking at people, who are backups, right? So yeah, I mean, they could. I mean, and then, on the offensive line, if they don't believe in one of the, I mean, Herbert Jones has had a good stretch of games recently. I think he's coming together. So I think that, like, yeah, I mean, it would have to be on the defensive side of the ball for me personally. I think they would have to be on the defensive side of the ball. And look, I think it all depends on, like you said, if they beat Buffalo. But other than that, I don't think they would be really buyers like that.
Lose to Buffalo, are you a seller? Because here's the thing, I've heard rumblings, not anything serious, more fans than anybody worried or thinking that they should be trading Tyreek Hill. People don't even think Tyreek is hurt. People didn't even think he got a rest day. They thought Tyreek is being traded. Tyreek is being shopped. And it makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. I don't think you take weapons away from young quarterbacks. I think you should be doing everything in your power to add weapons, right? I don't think that that's going to happen. I don't think they're going to trade Tyreek. I think if you think about what he's done in this offense, last year, like, there's no reason for him to even want to be traded for real, unless he truly believes that, like, this is, I'm done. But, like, obviously there's nothing, we don't have anything that can support that, right? So
no.
As it stands now, I don't think they're trading anybody, especially one of those core guys, like not Tyreek, none of the names, but those are fans, right? Fans are always going to be, the minute that you don't, like, meet their, lofty expectations, it's like, well, like, let's trade him. So it's like, yeah, you can't give that much merit. So I personally don't think that they'll be sellers at the deadline if they lose. I mean, if they are, it's going to be like, I don't think it's going to be anybody huge, right? Like, I don't think that they're going to, like the big names, right? Like a Tyreek Hill or, Jalen Ramsey. I don't think any of those guys are gone. So.
I want to ask you about this. What has to happen for the Miami Dolphins to pull off an upset victory over the Buffalo Bills?
I think if they get in the offensive groove that they were in last week, right? I think that's going to be step one, right? Establish an offensive rhythm that ends in touchdowns instead of field goals. I think 2, you're gonna have to force turnovers. You're gonna have to force turnovers and limit your own, right? I think
who gets turnovers on the Miami Dolphins?
He threw 3 picks the last time. I'm not saying, you're right. All the reasons that you said for those picks are true, but still, he threw 3 of them, and then there was also 3 fumbles last week, right? That Tua had. I'm not, obviously these are uncharacteristic.
Turnover. The Dolphins have to take care of the ball.
Yes, the Dolphins have to take care of the ball. I'm saying the Dolphins have to take care of the ball, and they also have to turn over the Bills, because you're right. Josh Allen has been pretty good when it comes to turnovers this year, right? That doesn't mean that he can't revert back to old ways, right? So I think if you can get there, put him on the ground a few times, right? I think there's
Josh Allen on the ground.
You're asking me what has to happen. I think you got to put him on the ground a few times. You have to put it, because it's kind of like with like a 3-point shooter, right? Like, if he misses the first one, right, you might, and you put some body to him, he might go on a little bit of a cold streak, right? And I think it's the same thing with elite quarterbacks, right? You want them to feel you, right? So look, you put them on the ground a few times. I think that's step number 2. You protect the football and you take the football away. That's step number 2. And I think the third thing that has to happen, right, is like I feel like this is super broad, but I've written about it. I wrote about it on Monday. They have to eliminate the mental errors. Like, I think that's been a big thing with this team, whether it was the penalties, whether it was the holding calls.
Do you believe that they're beating themselves? Because they have this theory that they are beating themselves.
They are beating themselves because they're in certain instances they are a missed block here away, or a hold away, or a fumble out the end zone away from winning games, right? And not to say, like, if they wouldn't have got the safety last week, it would have been they would have 100% won the game. But if you look at the scoring margin, they lost by 1 point. Like, it's hard not to think, like, if you don't have a mental mistake there, right? Because the offense was moving, right? The offense was fire. if you don't have that mental mistake there, you could potentially put more points on the board, even if you just add 3 more points. So I think so that's the final key for me. I want them to, because they're going to have to play borderline perfect, right? And they are. I feel like they are, especially with
okay, I can see that. Yeah,
they have to play borderline perfect, and for that to happen, you have to be mental mistake free. No stupid holding calls that's going to call back the 30-yard run. You're like no, fumbling at the goal line, like no, you know what I'm saying. They need to cut that out. It's week 8. You know what I'm saying? It's week 8. People are tired of seeing this. They cut it out. I think we're good. I think they have a chance.
Yes. I definitely think that they have a chance, but I think 2 things have to happen for this team to pull off a victory over Buffalo. I don't think I call Josh Allen the Dolphins' daddy, because he is their daddy. And when he wants to see his kids, he comes and he wants visitation in Miami and South Florida. He gets to see his kids. Can't keep him away from his kids now.
That's crazy.
Here's my 2 issues. I think the Dolphins have to have the sustained rushing success that they've had. They've had 3 straight games with over 150 rushing yards. There has to be the commitment to that. And I don't think that's changing. I think that's the one thing this mediocre quarterback stretch that they've been through has helped them create that identity.
I agree.
They believe ultimately that identity will pay off at the end later in the season, when basically a lot of teams don't want to really play and hit, and they got to deal with a physical rushing attack. Now, all of that's predicated on an offensive line staying healthy. And then also on the flip side, they've got to be successful defending the run and containing Cook. Last week was the first time all season the Dolphins held an opponent to under 100 rushing yards. Yeah. They have struggled very badly against the run, and then managed to hold an opponent, a physical opponent, a very successful rushing team, under 100 yards for the very first time. Now, it didn't help them in the final drive, but they did that all on their own. I think that they have to run for 150, and they have to hold the Buffalo Bills to under 100. Now, doing that is going to be virtually impossible, because we know that Josh Allen can scramble 2 times and it equals up to about 40 yards. But I think that anything is possible in this game. I think if the Dolphins have efficiency on defense in terms of stopping third downs, getting off the field on third downs, which they've had success all season doing it. They've been number 1 pretty much all season at third down defense. And then offensively, if they have success converting third downs, and Tua Tagovailoa, first game, 8 of 16, second game, 7 of 15, and then his third game last season, 11 of 15. If you don't know if Tua is an efficient quarterback that stays on the field on third downs and continues to convert drives, you're fooling yourself.
Yeah.
Now, what they can't afford, just as you said, is turnovers.
Yeah.
I'm not a big believer that this team has been beating themselves. I think their opponents have been beating them. But prove it to me and show me that you can play a clean game, and then we'll assess from there. So what is your prediction, Mr. Isaiah Smalls?
Unfortunately, I'm going to go 31-17 Bills.
I am going to go a little bit closer. I'm going to go 24-21 Buffalo Bills. I do believe that this is going to be a step in the right direction for the Miami Dolphins, but I think Josh Allen's going to put on a cape and play Superman again. But if it doesn't happen and the Dolphins do find a way to get their 3rd victory of the season and could possibly create some momentum and start to steamroll and put some victories together like they did in 2021, I would not be surprised, and I'd be very impressed and very excited about the season, because we need reason for hope. And I think that's what this Dolphins game, that's what this Dolphins going up to Buffalo is about, is finding reasons for hope. Amen. All right. On that note, Dolphins In Depth will be back on Monday. Enjoy the game. Do not check out on this team, and let's see how they respond to that Buffalo Bills game.